Hello everyone and welcome to Project Auto. Today we are doing a fuel injector cleaning on my 2010 C300. This is the M272 engine, which comes in a variety of models. In this case it's the 3-liter version, but we have the 3.5, which is basically the same in the E350 GLK models, as well as a few others, typically from 2007 to about 2011. So if you have the same engine, you might run into this issue eventually, where your fuel injectors may get gunked up. That is what I had. I had multiple misfires on one bank, which, looking at the spark plugs, looking at the rest of the items, air, fuel, spark, it was a pretty clear indicator with my scanner that fuel was the issue. So it was time to look at the fuel injectors. So I've kind of skipped ahead here in terms of disassembly. We're at the part taking the ECU off, but to get to this point, mainly you're going to be removing your air box, all the front intake tubes, pretty standard stuff. Then you're going to go ahead and unclip the ECU and remove these brackets. First we're going to start with the left side, but we're going to go a little piece by piece here, just to point out what screws you need to remove to kind of remove this upper harness. So you can see there's one hole in the loop back there, there's one loop near the front of the engine right here, and there is also one in the center, which I'm not sure if I point out, but it's in the upper left of the screen right now. And then we have to disconnect the coil packs, and then there is another screw that holds in the ground wire just at the bottom of the left bank. So once that is done, that kind of gives us a chance to loosen the harness. We won't be removing it completely, but we need to make it a little bit mobile, so we'll be able to remove the fuel later. So now we'll move on to the electrical connections. First thing is for the secondary air pump. It's just a clip you can pinch and pull out. Then we have about 5 plugs here, if I recall. So we have this upper one. There's also one hidden beneath it. I recommend being careful with these. These have the tab at the top, and you'll just have to pry it up, unlock it, and then remove it. So there's 2 up at the top here, and there should be one more kind of a bit further down as well. So then we're going to remove 2 screws in the back here. As you can see, I've already removed them. And you want to make sure that you're going to organize all these screws, because you don't want to get them mixed up. A lot of them are fairly similar. There's just slight differences in length for some of them. So, and most of these are going to be an E10 as well as a T30 Torx for removing. So it's going to be one or the other pretty much for this entire job. Otherwise it's just clips. Pretty easy things to remove. So we can actually get this ECU out of the way now if you want. I do it later, but because the battery's unplugged, it's just less of a hassle just to remove it. We do have the connection here for the other side of the bank, where there are 2 plugs, which you should also remove, and we're going to loosen that up so we have a little bit of mobility. And that is right next to the fuel line and another screw that we're going to remove underneath that. So now we're going to put our focus on taking the rest of the items on the right bank. So we'll start by removing this bracket. Here's another look at these plugs. These ones were a little tough to remove, but just as usual, you just got to be a little careful. You can always use like a little screwdriver to help, but you don't want to break the clips. So after removing the 2 screws, the EGR hose has a little bracket on the other side of this ECU holder, and we're just going to pop it out of there so we can kind of swing both of those items freely. Now on the other side, you can see here we're able to get the harness completely loose, and you can kind of lift it up to the side a little bit, and you've got a clear view of your fuel injectors. And I'm just going to point out the plugs here. Once again, these are the kind that you need to pry open a little bit first and then push down and remove. One thing that you should note is that that little gray tab can actually be pulled out all the way. So if you pull it too hard with the screwdriver, it can come out and you can lose it. I did that to only one of them, but unfortunately it fell on the ground. But if you lose it in the engine bay, that's not great. So you just want to be careful with how much pressure you apply to those. Now this is a step that I'd recommend doing also sooner, is removing the intake funnel where the MAF sensor is. Basically there's two tabs on the sides, as you can see, of this little plastic part. You're going to have to pry them outwards, and there's a little metal tab on the back, and that little metal tab you'll have to use a screwdriver as well, just to kind of pull it back from the outside, so that way you can pull the container up. So that gives us access to the EGR hose here. This is the only thing really blocking us from the right side, so we do have to pull this out. Nothing really spilled out of it, so you don't have to worry about that, but we do need it out of the way. So it is important to, if you don't remove that upper intake mesh, it's almost impossible to get that out. So I'd recommend doing that a little bit sooner. So now what we're going to do is we're going to purge the fuel out of the upper fuel rail. I expected more to come out of this, but surprisingly it wasn't that much. So I set up a funnel and a bottle, and it's just got like a Schrader valve in there, so you gotta just push the tab in and it'll purge any extra fuel. Like I said, I didn't really get that much, and still when I took the fuel rails out, there was quite a bit in there, so it doesn't do as much as we think it does. But then we're going to move on to disconnecting the fuel line. Once again, you're going to have some fuel spilling, so I'd recommend throwing some rags and having a funnel ready. This one, depending on the angle you hold the hose at, is how much fuel is going to come out. So just because some doesn't come out right away, don't imagine that, oh, the line is empty and I'm just going to leave it hanging, because if you put it down, it could start flowing, just like simple tube physics. So once all those items are out of the way, off to the side, we got the EGR hose pulled back. You can see our fuel rail for the most part is pretty open. The harness is a little bit in the way in the upper left, but all we're going to have to do is really just pull it to the side here, because if we take it all the way out, we're just making more work for ourselves. So the next step is going to be to remove that rail. So there are just 4 screws that are holding the fuel rail in place. They're pretty much in plain sight here. You can kind of see at these angles. And once you remove those, then all you need to do is pull the fuel rail up. You do need to apply some force, but you got to also be, somewhat delicate with it. It did take quite a bit of effort for me to pull them up. So then what we've got ahead and done is just laid it out on a old t-shirt here. I've got a bottle ready. There still will be fuel in there, so you just got to be prepared for any extra spillage and whatnot. But this gives us an opportunity to examine our injectors. Overall, mine were actually fine. I found that the issue that I had was I had gunk at the top of the injector rather than the bottom. So when I pulled the injectors out, the clumps of, let's say, carbon actually came out. Now I think mine was as a result of bad fuel, but it is also quite an old car at this point, so maybe some additives will help over time if you want to maybe avoid this job. But really what you just have to do is remove the little clip on all of these. Once you pull that clip out, then you should be able to just pull out the fuel injector itself. So then after that, I ran fuel injector cleaner through the fuel rail and each of the injectors. In order to clean the injectors, you have to kind of jerry-rig some cleaner to it and a battery so that you can tap it on and off, and you'll basically just put cleaner through it until it has a nice and clean spray. That was pretty much it. Putting everything back is the reverse of the installation, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. There are some more elaborate videos on the actual fuel injector cleaning part, but I found that generally most of them are pretty similar, and in most cases it doesn't quite merit buying new fuel injectors. All you really need to do is do a cleaning. So after that, I got my scanner. I had the trim lines, fuel trims recorded from before, where I can notice that there was a problem in one of the banks, and then after, where both of the banks were even and in proper tolerances. And so that was the end of the job. Everything was good. So just pretty much the costs involved a can of fuel injector cleaner. So pretty easy job, but a little bit time consuming. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If this video helped you out, please drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.